The sun, a relentless forge in the vast, ancient landscape, beat down on Dr. Imani Kaba. Her lean frame, late 30s, moved with a practiced grace honed by years in the field. Khaki trousers, sturdy boots, and a branded safari shirt formed her uniform against the wild, but today her practical gear felt heavier than usual. A small, portable spectrum analyzer swung gently from her shoulder, its readings typically a source of profound fascination, now only amplified the unsettling quiet. Her face, usually alight with scientific curiosity, was etched with a concern that went beyond the mere pursuit of knowledge, a determination bordering on dread. She knelt, sifting through the dry earth near a sparse bush, a faint tremor running through her fingertips. The air hung thick with an unnatural stillness, the usual symphony of insects and distant animal calls muted, as if the very ecosystem held its breath. This wasn't just another research trip. The heavy silence that had fallen over the sector of the reserve was unlike anything she'd encountered, a profound ecological anomaly. A rustle behind her, not of wildlife but of something far more disciplined, broke her concentration. She didn't need to turn to know he was there. Jared Thorne stood like a sentinel, his well-built frame a rigid shadow against the horizon. In his mid-40s, his sharp features were set in a permanent, unyielding mask, eyes that missed nothing. He was dressed in dark, formal tactical gear, a jarring contrast to the natural world around them, making him look less like a protector and more like a predator. An almost imperceptible bulge beneath his jacket hinted at covert surveillance equipment, an unsettling detail that had gnawed at Imani since his arrival. Jared exuded authority, a dangerous kind, his presence a silent declaration that he was in control, that this operation, whatever its true nature, was his domain. He never spoke unless absolutely necessary, and then his voice was a low, gravelly command. Imani straightened, a sigh catching in her throat. Her eyes met Jared's briefly, a flicker of defiance in her gaze before she turned to the older man who moved with a slow, deliberate cadence at the edge of their small, tense perimeter. Elder Thabo, his face a landscape of wrinkles, told tales of seasons and generations, each line etched with wisdom that ran deeper than any scientific textbook. He wore traditional, earthy-toned attire, colors that blended seamlessly with the very soil beneath his feet, and his hand gripped a wooden staff, polished smooth by time and touch. His eyes, dark and knowing, held a deep, ancient suspicion that mirrored Imani's own burgeoning unease. Thabo offered a slight nod, his gaze sweeping the desolate landscape, then settling on Imani, a silent acknowledgement of the shared, unspoken fear that hung between them. He had seen the land change, had felt the subtle shifts in the wind long before any scientist could measure them. He represented the ancestral knowledge, the spiritual guardian of this land, now witnessing an intrusion that felt both alien and sacrilegious. Imani's scientific mind struggled to reconcile the conflicting data. Her instruments, her training, her passion for conservation all screamed that something was terribly wrong, an ecological disaster of unprecedented scale. But Jared's presence, his chilling silence, the guarded glances he exchanged with unseen operatives, hinted at something far more sinister than a natural phenomenon. This wasn't just about dying wildlife. It felt like a secret operation, a clandestine endeavor unfolding beneath the guise of a humanitarian mission. She was caught between her duty to the land and the unsettling realization that she was a pawn in a game she didn't understand, her very expertise being exploited. The stakes felt impossibly high, her own ethical compass spinning wildly. The weight of her scientific oath clashed violently with a burgeoning sense of dread, a primal warning whispered by Elder Thabo's knowing eyes. Was she here to save, or to simply observe the unthinkable? The air grew heavier, pressing down on her, the silence now a tangible threat, a prelude to a truth she wasn't sure she wanted to uncover. The relentless high-pitched mewling of Keon was a physical torment to Jabari. It clawed at his insides, a sound far more potent than any wound. He licked the tiny, trembling body again, his rough tongue a comfort, his massive frame a shield against the biting night air. He nudged the cub, offered the warmth of his belly, but the primal hunger in Keon's cries remained, echoing his own helplessness. Jabari could provide protection, but not the sustenance that pulsed through a mother's veins. A gnawing desperation forced Jabari to make an agonizing choice. He found a dense thicket, a place of shadows and concealment, and gently placed Kian amidst the thorny branches, his heart heavy with the impossible gamble. The cub's cries, though muffled, still reverberated in his skull as he melted into the savannah, driven by the hunt. He moved with a silent, deadly purpose, every muscle taut, every sense attuned to the possibility of prey. The urgency of Kian's survival spurred him to reckless speed. He returned, the metallic tang of fresh kill on his breath, his powerful jaws clenching nothing but air. A cold dread gripped him before he even reached the thicket. A flicker of movement, a flash of tawny fur, and the guttural snarl that tore from Jabari's throat was pure, unadulterated fury. A lone hyena, opportunistic and bold, had found Kian, its jaws already poised over the tiny, squirming form. "No, he is mine!" The roar vibrated through the earth. Jabari launched himself forward, a dark, powerful projectile of muscle and wrath. The hyena, startled, didn't stand a chance. Jabari's attack was swift, brutal, and without mercy. The snap of bone, the wet tear of flesh. The hyena was dispatched with an efficiency born of a father's unbound rage. He stood over its crumpled form, chest heaving, amber eyes blazing with a protective fire that would consume anything that threatened his cub. The adrenaline slowly receded, replaced by the chilling reality of Kian's continued hunger. His mind, usually sharp with the instincts of a predator, began to wander into impossible territory. He remembered the nursing zebra mares he'd seen at the waterhole, their udders heavy with milk. An insane idea, a defiance of millions of years of natural law, began to take root. As dusk bled into the eastern edge of the Ngorongoro crater, painting the sky in dramatic oranges and purples, Jabari approached the zebra herd with an unnerving, deliberate slowness. Kian, held delicately in his jaws, whimpered weakly. Jabari made himself small, his posture unthreatening, almost submissive, an alien display for a creature of his magnitude. The zebras, a nervous kaleidoscope of stripes, immediately tensed, their snorts cutting through the twilight. Panic rippled through them, but Jabari did not charge. He simply sat, his massive body lowering to the earth, placing Kian carefully between his paws. Kian's cries, raw with the agony of starvation, carried on the cooling air, reaching a zebra mare standing apart from the herd. Her udder was heavy, swollen with unused milk, a bitter reminder of the foal she had lost only days before. An unusual void echoed within her, a maternal instinct unfulfilled. She looked at the tiny golden cub, then at the magnificent, scarred lion who sat with a stillness that was utterly unnatural. Defying every instinct hammered into her species over millennia, the mare took a hesitant step, then another. The herd shifted, uneasy, but she moved with a strange, compelling purpose. Jabari remained absolutely still, a statue of desperate hope. Mercy, unprecedented. She approached, her nostrils flaring, her eyes meeting Jabari's for a fleeting moment, an acknowledgement, perhaps, of his impossible plea. She nudged Kian gently with her nose, then, with a profound, almost mystical surrender, allowed the cub to nurse. A fleeting, miraculous bond formed under the fading light. Kian latched on, a desperate suckling, his cries finally quieting. Jabari watched, vigilant, his heart aching with an unfamiliar emotion. Moments later, the mare, as if waking from a trance, pulled away and retreated back to her herd, leaving behind an indelible mark. This singular event, an act of unprecedented gratitude, bought them precious time, a reprieve in their desperate struggle. It solidified Jabari's resolve, cementing his commitment to Kian. Days turned into weeks. Kian began to open his eyes, and Jabari noticed an unusual intensity in those budding amber pools, a focus rarely seen in cubs so young. He seemed to learn faster, to observe with a peculiar depth. During his increasingly desperate hunts, Jabari began to notice subtle shifts in the landscape. Near isolated springs, places where he often found prey, he observed strange, almost too perfect geometric patterns of flattened grass, as if something vast and precise had been pressed into the earth. And surrounding these clearings, an unnaturally resilient invasive plant species thrived, its vibrant green a jarring contrast to the more muted, natural flora. His keen hunter's eyes also caught the glint of something alien. Small, almost transparent, metallic fibers woven among the grass blades, catching the light like tiny fragmented shards of a mirror. They were clearly not natural to the crater. A primal unease stirred within Jabari. This natural world, his domain, was showing subtle, unnatural scars, hinting at an intrusion far more insidious than any predator. Weeks had woven themselves into the fabric of Jabari and Keon's impossible existence. Keon, now a sturdy 2-month-old, played with a vigor that belied his perilous start to life. He chased shadows, pounced on imaginary prey, and wrestled with Jabari's massive paw, his movements already showing the coiled power of his lineage, a miniature echo of his formidable father. Their daily ritual often found them on a large, sun-warmed rock, exposed but offering a wide view of their crater sanctuary. Jabari watched him, a rare, almost fragile sense of happiness blooming in his chest. A hope, tenuous but persistent, had begun to root itself against the crushing weight of their odds. He'd navigated the treacherous tightrope of unnatural alliances, defied the very laws of the wild, all for this small, vibrant life. Then a sudden immense shadow fell, an omen of immediate, devastating change. It blotted out the morning sun, plunging their world into an instant, chilling gloom. Keon's playful yelp morphed into a piercing, shattering scream that tore through the peaceful morning, echoing off the ancient crater walls. Jabari surged forward, but it was already too late. An enormous martial eagle, a creature of the sky, far larger and more aggressive than any Jabari had ever encountered, descended with terrifying speed. Its talons, like iron hooks, snatched Keon from the rock, and in a single beat of its colossal wings ascended rapidly, the tiny cub struggling helplessly in its grip. The eagle's unnaturally bright yellow eyes, fixed with an unsettling intensity, seemed to burn with an almost electric glow, a ferocity that felt deeply unnatural. The cub's terrified cries, sharp and desperate, drifted down to Jabari, but something else reached him too. A faint, almost imperceptible, strange chemical scent, a biomarker of some kind clinging to the air where the eagle had been, a subtle but unsettling detail that his heightened senses registered even through his panic. It was metallic, acrid, alien. Not again! Never again! The roar that tore from Jabari's throat was a primal symphony of anguish and defiant fury, a visceral rejection of fate. He launched himself forward, a tawny blur against the green, his powerful legs eating up the ground. He pushed his body to speeds usually reserved for the most desperate hunts. But this was different. This was pure, unadulterated love, an instinct far deeper than prey drive. The eagle, despite the struggling weight of Keon, gained altitude with disturbing, unnatural speed, its massive wings effortlessly cutting through the air. It didn't head for the usual nesting sites. Instead, it flew directly towards the sheer 600-meter cliffs that formed the crater's formidable rim. Jabari reached the cliff base, a towering vertical wall of volcanic rock that seemed to mock his terrestrial power. His chest heaved, lungs burning, and his paws were raw and bleeding from the frantic, desperate sprint over sharp stones and thorny scrub. He threw his head back, amber eyes scanning the impossible height, every instinct in his lion's body screaming against attempting such a climb. The sheer, impossible verticality of the rock face was a death sentence. But Keon's faint cries, now tinged with that unsettling, alien biomarker scent, drifted down to him from dizzying heights, pulling him upward, overriding all fear, all common sense. He fixed his gaze on the rapidly shrinking speck that was his son. "Male lions do not climb," a voice deep within him seemed to whisper, a legacy of a species abound to the earth. But fathers, it seems, would attempt anything. His amber eyes, locked on the tiny, struggling form of Kion high above, burned with a shocking determination, a fierce, unwavering resolve that transcended the bounds of his own nature, ready to defy gravity, instinct, and death itself to reach his son and unknowingly confront the source of the crater's unnatural changes. Jabari placed his massive paw on the hot, rough, volcanic rock. His hardened claws, designed for tearing flesh and gripping earth, struggled to find purchase in the shallow fissures. Every fiber of his being, every instinct etched into his genetic code screamed at him to stop, to abandon this insane, unnatural act. Lions belong to the savannah, not the vertical face of a mountain. His body, built for horizontal power and explosive speed, trembled, muscles straining in unfamiliar ways as he pushed upward, defying millennia of evolutionary design. Keon needs me. Nothing else matters. The thought was a relentless drumbeat in his skull, overriding the pain, overriding fear. His son's scent, faint and mingled with that odd metallic biomarker, was a phantom limb, pulling him relentlessly toward the dizzying heights. Loose stones crumbled beneath his weight, sending him sliding backward twice, each terrifying descent ending with his claws desperately digging into new, precarious holds. A searing pain shot through his paw pads, and he glanced down to see crimson streaks blooming against the gray rock, a stark testament to his struggle. He climbed meter by agonizing meter. At approximately 30 meters, as he painstakingly navigated a narrow ledge, his keen eyes caught a subtle gleam. Embedded in the rock, unlike any natural mineral, was a faintly glowing, almost transparent metallic residue, catching the harsh midday sun with an unsettling luminescence. A few paces further, near a weathered overhang, he noticed faint geometric glyphs etched into the rock face, lines and angles too precise, too deliberate, to be the handiwork of natural weathering. These were not natural formations. At 40 meters, the cliff presented an even greater challenge, a formidable overhang, a feat utterly impossible for a lion, his instincts roared. But desperation was a powerful teacher. With a guttural grunt of effort, his powerful hind legs scrabbling for purchase, he hauled his heavy body over the lip, his muscles screaming in protest, ligaments stretched to their breaking point. From above, he now heard it more clearly, the shrill chirping of the eagle's chick, a stark counterpoint to Keon's terrified mewling. But underlying those sounds, Jabari's sensitive ears perceived another, stranger sound, a faint, high-frequency hum, almost subliminal, emanating from within the very rock of the cliff face, now amplified by his proximity. It was a mechanical thrum, entirely out of place in this ancient landscape. At 50 meters, a colony of rock hyrax, sunning themselves on a narrow outcrop, scattered in a burst of panicked squeaks at his unnatural, impossible presence. Their fear was palpable, a reflection of the profound disruption he represented. It was then, as he watched their frantic retreat into crevices, that he saw them. Small, no bigger than a beetle, almost perfectly camouflaged against the rock, were metallic sensors, blinking faintly with a rhythmic, almost imperceptible light. These are not natural. The thought solidified in his mind, sharp and cold. The growing heat of the sun, the searing pain in his torn paws, the raw exhaustion that threatened to overwhelm him, all were secondary now. He had to reach Keon. But more than that, he had to understand these unsettling discoveries. The geometric markings, the metallic residue, the faint hum, the tiny blinking sensors, and the unnaturally aggressive, oversized eagle. They were all pieces of a puzzle. Each new unnatural detail added to a dawning, terrifying realization. This was not a natural disaster, not a random act of fate. This was the work of an unseen, insidious human hand. The eagle's aggression and size felt less like an evolutionary quirk and more like a terrifying consequence, a controlled variable in a deeper, hidden conspiracy. Jabari pushed past exhaustion, fueled by a love that transcended instinct and a primal need to uncover the truth. He was climbing not just to save Keon, but unknowingly into the very heart of a hidden truth, a human-made threat that had begun to scar his world. If you're finding Jabari's impossible journey as gripping as I am, make sure to hit that like button, share this story with your friends, and subscribe to unravel the rest of this mind-bending conspiracy with us. Because what Jabari is about to discover could change everything. Jabari pulled himself onto the eagle's narrow ledge, every muscle in his body screaming in agony, his huge frame shaking uncontrollably from exertion and pain. His paws were raw, bleeding testament to the impossible ascent. Before him, the enormous martial eagle, its yellow eyes blazing with an unsettling, unnatural ferocity, shrieked a challenge. "Give me my son!" Jabari's silent roar resonated with a will unyielding. He moved with a surprising grace for his size and injuries, reaching into the nest. His massive paw, scarred and brutal, was astonishingly gentle as it retrieved the trembling Kion, pulling the cub close to his chest. Kion, though terrified, burrowed into the familiar scent of his father. As Jabari began to back away, the eagle launched itself forward, a furious aerial assault. Its talons, honed for slaughter, raked across his shoulder and flank, causing searing, excruciating pain. The sheer force of the impact, combined with Jabari's precarious footing, caused the nest's edge to crumble beneath him. He was wounded on a narrow, collapsing ledge, with nowhere left to go. Below, the jagged rocks promised certain death. But then, through a momentary break in the eagle's renewed attack, Jabari spotted it, a deep, dark pool of water far below, nestled at the base of the cliff. An impossible gamble, a desperate, last-ditch hope. Keon's terrified amber eyes met his, full of an absolute, unwavering trust that pierced through Jabari's own fear. For you, my son, Jabari thought, a vow solidified. With every remaining ounce of strength, with a guttural roar that echoed his defiance, Jabari pushed off the crumbling cliff, leaping into empty air. The world spun in a dizzying, terrifying rotation. He instinctively curled his massive body, cradling Keon tightly, bracing for the inevitable, thunderous impact. They plunged downward, a lion and his cub, plummeting into the unknown. They hit the water with a deafening crash, driven deep into the cold darkness. The impact stunned him, his breath knocked from his lungs, but Jabari never loosened his grip on Keon. His waterlogged body fought the crushing pressure, his powerful legs instinctively kicking for the surface, fueled by the singular need to bring Keon to air, to life. He burst from the water, gasping, dragging himself onto the muddy shore of the secluded pool. Exhausted, battered, and trembling, he released Keon. The cub, soaked and shivering, looked up at him, alive. As Jabari began to groom him, his rough tongue cleaning away the grime and fear, he noticed something peculiar, a faint, almost luminescent residue on Keon's fur, similar to the strange glowing material he'd seen on the cliff face. His paw snagged on something. With careful precision, he nudged it loose. There, embedded in Keon's fur, was a tiny, transparent, metallic chip, no larger than a grain of sand, clearly artificial, a biomarker. In that moment, lying on the muddy bank, surrounded by the unsettling silence, the pieces coalesced into a shocking, terrifying realization. The eagle's abnormal size and aggression, its unnatural glowing eyes, the strange geometric markings on the cliff, the almost electric hum he'd felt, the peculiar residue, and now this chip on Keon. This is not nature, this is human. The unprecedented gratitude shown by the zebra, Keon's peculiar resilience, the inexplicable calm that had settled in him during the fall, it all pointed to something far more sinister than a simple accident. The crater's ecosystem wasn't just changing, it was compromised. It hinted at covert, unethical human experimentation, using the very creatures of his home as unwitting subjects. Jabari purred, a deep rumble of comfort for Keon, his rough tongue continuing to groom his cub. But his amber eyes, usually reflecting the wild, now held a fierce new understanding. His world, his home, was not what it seemed, and he had stumbled into the heart of a broader, chilling conspiracy. He would not only protect Keon, but he would uncover the truth. Jabari healed slowly, the deep talon marks on his shoulder and flank fading to new scars that joined the tapestry of battles on his magnificent body, each one a testament to his ordeal, to his unwavering commitment. Keon, now larger and more confident, was inseparable, a golden shadow at his father's heels. The cub displayed an unusual sensitivity, often pausing, his tiny nose twitching at faint, high-frequency sounds that Jabari sometimes missed, or subtle chemical scents that drifted on the wind. Guided by Keon's subtle reactions and his own persistent observations of the unnatural elements, the geometric patterns, the metallic fibers, the strange hum, Jabari began to purposefully track the source. He moved with a new kind of intent, a blend of hunter's stealth and a father's protective resolve. His amber eyes, once purely focused on prey, now scanned for the subtle scars of human interference. Their search led them at dusk to a secluded camouflage entrance near the crater rim, cleverly hidden by dense thickets. The strange, low hum, now distinctly audible, vibrated from within, accompanied by a faint, acrid chemical odor that Keon reacted to with a shudder. Outside, tucked away amongst the rocks, Jabari found discarded, branded containers, their labels clearly visible even in the fading light. Biogenetic research, classified. Nearby, almost swallowed by the undergrowth, were hidden surveillance cameras, their cold, unblinking lenses aimed at the pristine wilderness. Meanwhile, Dr. Imani Kaba, the dedicated wildlife biologist, had been independently following her own breadcrumbs of anomaly. The unusual behavior of the martial eagle, its unprecedented aggression, the localized ecological disturbances, they had screamed unnatural to her scientific mind. She had spent weeks tracking down the source, her equipment buzzing with increasingly anomalous readings. Her search culminated in the discovery of the same discarded biogenetic research, classified containers near the camouflage facility. Her portable spectrum analyzer, aimed at the general vicinity, suddenly detected a faint, unusual signal, emanating not from the facility itself but from a nearby golden cub. Her heart lurched. This was it. Her worst fears confirmed. "This is illegal, unethical, a complete cover-up," Imani whispered, recognizing the biomarker on the cub as a unique signature, a distinct fingerprint of a known, illicit corporation she'd been tracking. She knew this signature from whispered reports of unethical genetic manipulation, stories often dismissed as conspiracy theories. As she moved cautiously, her own fear warring with righteous indignation, she encountered Jabari and Keon near the hidden facility entrance. Jabari, sensing her lack of threat, his hyper-alert senses registering Keon's surprising calm in her presence, allowed her close. An unspoken, profound understanding passed between them. Two disparate protectors of this land, now united by a common, terrifying enemy. Imani's eyes, full of shock and defiant determination, met Jabari's burning amber gaze. The fragile truce shattered instantly. Jared Thorne, the stern covert operative, and his team emerged from the shadows, their dark tactical gear blending with the encroaching night. They moved with chilling efficiency, attempting to ambush Imani, to capture Keon, and to silence her. "Get the cub! Secure the biologist!" Thorne's voice was a harsh whisper, but Jabari was faster. A roar of pure, protective fury, a primal challenge that shook the very ground, tore from his throat. He launched himself at Thorne's team, his scarred body a weapon, every ounce of his power unleashed. He displayed a chilling tactical intelligence, using his immense strength and the natural terrain to his advantage, driving them back. Surveillance devices shattered under his crushing paws, equipment ripped apart by his teeth. The humans, though armed, were unprepared for the sheer, focused wrath of a lion protecting his son and his fragile new ally. Imani, seizing the opportunity, her fingers flying across her device, transmitted critical data about the biomarkers and the facility to global watchdog organizations. A desperate plea for justice. Thorne, his face etched with surprise and frustration, quickly signaled for retreat. As his team fell back, his chilling words hung in the air, a dark promise. "This is just the beginning. The crater holds secrets you can't comprehend. You haven't won." Jabari and Keon stood victorious, the silence of the crater slowly returning, punctuated only by their ragged breathing. But the victory was bittersweet. The crater, their home, was no longer pristine. The natural world was now irrevocably tainted by human ambition, a silent, unseen battle fought and won. But the war for their world had just begun. The final terrifying realization dawned on Jabari. The true danger wasn't just predators or the harshness of the wild. It was the insidious, calculating greed of humans, a conspiracy far grander and more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. He looked at Tian, a silent promise burning in his amber eyes. He would protect their world, no matter the cost. Jabari's impossible journey from a solitary predator to a father defying all natural laws had rewritten his world. The agonizing cries of Keon had driven him to unprecedented acts, accepting mercy from a zebra, climbing an insurmountable cliff face, and ultimately making a terrifying leap into the void. Each desperate action, fueled by an unbreakable bond, peeled back another layer of the Ngorongoro's hidden truth. The unnatural aggression of the eagle, the subtle biomarkers, the metallic traces, and the sinister hum from the hidden facility all culminated in a chilling realization. In that frozen moment, as the massive lion became airborne, all four paws extended into empty sky, his dark mane streaming like a war banner, there was nothing but air below. Above him, wings beat frantically, the martial eagle struggling to gain altitude, its small golden bundle twisting and crying out. Jabari did not think about the fall. He thought only of his son. The great lion was no longer merely a king. He was a father who had already lost everything and would stop at nothing to save the last piece of his heart. His victory, shared with Imani against Thorne's team, was hard-won but tinged with a terrifying new understanding. The crater was no longer pristine. The true danger was not found in tooth and claw, but in the insidious, calculating greed of human ambition, a conspiracy far grander and more terrifying than he could have ever imagined. He looked at Keon, a silent promise to protect their world,